Mayhem here at Suspiria Works Cinema, where we watch all the movies, now in HD. The camera broke, if you didn't notice that on the last video, so we had to change cameras. And in light of that, we're going to talk about big fancy movies. Part of the Michael Bay series, I'm going to do all the Transformers movies, including the fourth one, which I won't give a video review because I just saw it in the theater. This is a unique kind of scenario. You have the same director doing all these movies in a super huge budget franchise, based on a cartoon from 30 years ago. Now, I would consider myself a Transformers fan. I watched the Gen 1 cartoon. I own all of those. Read all the Marvel comics from back in the day. The newer ones, it never really captured me on the comics. The newer shows, I did not like most of them, especially nonsense like Beast Wars, which was just abysmal. So that's where I'm coming from as far as a Transformers background. As a Michael Bay background, I like the Transformers movies. I feel they are the weaker of Bay's directorial efforts, and a lot of that I don't necessarily blame him for. At any point you're doing movies in the 200 million plus range, unless you happen to be, a James Cameron or Lucas where you're financing them yourself, you don't get as much say as you'd like. I mean, these are completely driven by the mass market and the media and controlled by sponsors, especially if you see the latest one. They were very specifically targeting the Chinese market. Now, that makes sense. I mean, they're watching a lot of movies. The Transformers movies do well over there. And to reinforce that business decision, the movie made $100 million here on the first weekend, and it made $90 in China on the first weekend. So, right there, yeah, you probably want to cater to that market. And that's also where, some of the complaints of what the Decepticons transform into, changing from cool military planes to cars, while as a artistic choice, I disagree with that. I understand. Ferrari wanted to pay more money. And when you're dealing with that kind of revenue, you kind of got to give up your artistic ideals. So, that out of the way, I give some leeway on that. And again, these are not meant to be thought-provoking movies or even deep movies like, something like The Island or Pain and Gain. They're meant to be fun, huge explosions, over-the-top, giant robot fighting. And the fact he has Peter Cullen sells me alone. I can listen to him talk as Optimus as much as he wants to put on the screen. So, let's start with the first movie, which stars Peter Cullen and some other people, mainly because they don't matter. While LaBeouf's performance in the first one is okay, he really gets on my nerves in the second and third one, and pretty much every other movie I've seen him in, he kind of just gets on my nerves. The parents didn't bother me so much. They were kind of funny, a little over the top. And the supporting characters I actually like. Gibson and Duhamel, they're fine. I mean, they play their parts perfectly. They're charismatic actors, good-looking guys to bring in the girls to help offset the insane amount of beautiful women that Bay always puts in his movies, which is always a plus. Megan Fox, honestly, I never had a problem with her. I think she's fine. She's in every movie she's been in. She's not a bad actress. She gets terrible parts, and she's been in some really crappy movies, but she gets a role as a sex pot, and she plays it. So I don't really get the Megan Fox hate as far as that goes either. So the first movie, you got the kid finds the Autobots, and you get this more of a discovery type of vibe. And, of course, no one knew, would it make money? I mean, the entire time this was being talked about for the decade plus before it came out, it bounced around, ideas were tossed, and when I heard Bay was doing it, I said, okay, he knows how to make a big movie. This has a chance. And it's a fun movie. It's great seeing the Transformers on screen. Some of the stuff he did to change him, I get. You change him from the cartoon to make him a little more realistic. They still look cool. Again, Cullen being there really tied it together for me because it felt like I was watching Optimus Prime. And some of his lines, especially the copy line from the animated movie that they have at the final fight scene with Megatron, totally sold it. So I really like the first movie. It's a lot of fun, cool, I mean, fantastic visuals, amazing special effects. Not really much more I could have asked for other than more giant robot fighting, which is always what you want. And I would give the same thing to Pacific Rim. The only thing more I wanted out of that was more giant robot fighting. Less people. I don't care about people, but I get it. For a mass market, you have to have the human characters there because your demographic and your test audiences aren't going to relate to a bunch of robots. So I understand that. Well, that was a huge success, so they in turn had to make a sequel. Revenge of the Fallen is probably the most panned movie of the series, and I get it. It was rushed. It was very rushed because it wasn't in prep. Like 3 was in prep before 2 was released, and as was 4. 2 was not. 2 was decided after it was done. They had Bay drop everything he was working on and pulled him in to direct this movie with some haphazard script. The idiot bots are awful. To this day, I swear those were inserted at some point later and by some maniac rogue at the studio, and no one else watched the movie with them in there. Because I cannot imagine who watched that movie and said, yeah, those are good characters, because they're really stupid. Now, I rewatched all these just 2 weeks ago, right before the movie came out, to get refreshed. 2 is not as bad as I remember it. It's still the weakest Michael Bay movie, period, and the worst in the series. But there's some nice robot fight scenes, and I like the look of the Transformers. You get to see some other cool transforming type things. The comedy aspects, like Devastator's balls, kind of out of place. The other problems is the movie has a lot of mismatch where I'm not quite sure how things are going together or why. And then there's LaBeouf. Oh, he's so bad in this movie. I mean, the possessing shard from the Matrix thing, just why? It doesn't make any sense. What's the point? And why does he have to make that ridiculous face every time and shake like an idiot? He really, if he was on screen, it was kind of irritating me. And honestly, he was more irritating to me because he's on the screen more than those 2 stupid robots. But overall, it still has a nice action vibe to it. It works well as a jumping point. There's a couple really cool fight scenes to watch with, again, giant robots. But the story's weak, and yeah, I can't defend it much to a lot of the haters. But again, it's the worst giant robot fighting movie. Well, no, I take that back. There's always a Robot Wars, which was the bad knockoff of Robot Jocks. If you've ever seen that, that's really bad. But as far as a modern style big budget movie, sure, it's the worst. But again, what are you comparing it to? There isn't much else, you know? There's not really... This is a very niche subgenre. So, yeah, it's passable. Rewatching them, I would probably skip 2 more often than not. But it's okay. Now, the third one, Dark of the Moon, which still should have been Dark Side of the Moon, but I'm guessing they were afraid of being sued by Pink Floyd. This kind of pulls it back. We got rid of Megan Fox and replaced her with Jason Statham's girlfriend. or she was at the time. Anyway, she's really hot, which is a plus. So that's great. Dempsey's a good bad guy. LaBeouf is still terrible. And his parents being inserted into the third one, I felt was really weird. That almost seemed to me like a reshoot or something, and they added them in because they're not really part of any integral scenes, so that could have been shot as easily as reshoots. So I'm wondering if that wasn't something that went through the test audience and they were like, yeah, where's his parents? What happened? And they reshot it. So other than that, my main complaint is the lack of Megatron. I like the idea of having a different villain, but I felt that Megatron was way too backstaged in this. It was nice to see him come back at the end, but I would have liked a little bit more of him kind of taking command, because he was kind of a pussy for the whole movie. The Transformers are fantastic all through it, and Prime being uber badass at the end and just being vicious was amazing. Sure, I saw the betrayal coming, but I mean, who didn't? And a lot of it was predictable up until they actually wiped out Chicago, which I thought was a great touch. I love the fact that it just annihilated the whole city. It's a great dark scene. They kill a lot of people. I mean, it feels R-rated once you get to the last act of the film, and I really like that. It's nice to see the characters come back. You know, I like how they kind of talk about Megan Fox and like, oh, it didn't work out. I'm like, okay, fine. So you tie up those loose ends, and you have some of the villains, I guess, the human villains are really kind of mustache twiddly, but it works well, especially in context of what it is. And for me, I feel Michael Bay gets it. I mean, the show is hokey. It really is. I love it. It's still hokey. And that's the kind of villains you have in this. He didn't go a Dark Knight and inject this uber-realistic seriousness to the franchise. He made it believable, yet still reminiscent of the frivolity of the old series. And I think with the third one, you get a nice conclusion, and everything is hunky-dory. I didn't think there was gonna be a fourth one, or, well, I take that back. After the money, I figured there would be a fourth one. I think Michael Bay was gonna do it. So when I heard he was, I was pretty curious. So I went and saw it at the theater. I don't go to the theater much anymore, so that was that's a rare thing. And I really liked it. You replaced LaBeouf with a far better actor, Wahlberg, and that right there alone took away most of my complaints from the first three movies. So he's great. You got another pretty girl, plays his daughter in there. You got some guy, I forgot who he was. He's not really memorable, but he's there as the eye candy for the girls, I'm sure. I can't figure out why else he's in the movie. And, this takes place, spoilers on the fourth one, this takes place 5 years after Part 3, and the destruction of Chicago has happened, so people are kind of afraid of the Transformers. And I like that route. I wasn't expecting it, really. And it gave a nice vibe. And then they start building all this backstory with this bounty hunter coming from somewhere else, sent by the original people who created the Autobots and Decepticons, like what's going on. Lots of centerpiece action moving to the robots, I felt, in this one, because there's a lot of fight scenes. I mean, just big action scenes, and they're all long. I think there was 240-something, and there's a lot of fight scenes. So that's great. Tons of new Transformers, with John Goodman being the standout awesomeness, and Ken Watanabe is a samurai, of course, which is brilliant in its own right. I like the new Transformers. You get the old guys back, of course. You get Bumblebee in there, and some other characters. You see different stuff, find out what happened and where they're at now. I'm trying to avoid spoilers on the fourth one here, so I'm being a little vague. They jump around the world a lot. You have a huge action scene in China, which, of course, the Dinobots come in, and that's not a spoiler unless you haven't seen any advertisements, which they're really cool looking. I was one of those people who was kind of worried about the Dinobots being in a film, because as much as I loved them in the cartoon and I had the toys, Grimlock Smash or something just would have not worked in the universe that was created by the first 3 movies. It would have been, I don't know, goofy. And as much as I some deep part of me wanted that, I'm glad it didn't do it. And it was, I thought they looked great. They'll work very nice as toys, which if you ever watch some of the behind the scenes, Bay explains essentially the toy companies come and they say, this is the toy we're making, now make a movie version of the toy. So, or the marketing guys come. So that's kind of how it works. So you can't, again, if you listen to any director's talk, I know John Carpenter, Joe Carnahan especially, has been very vocal about, as your budget increases and the bigger the studio production it is, the less control, say, and power you start getting. And that's why you'll see a lot of directors flat out just not do the bigger movies. Bay likes the money, and hey, it gave him the money to self-finance Pain and Gain, and that's worth it. I will sit through I will go to every Transformers movie if it gives him the money to make movies like that every so often. So I get that, but bottom line is, I think the 4th one is the most mature of them all. I felt it was the most serious, and I enjoyed it slightly more than the first one. Some of that maybe because of the lack of LaBeouf, because I just don't like him. I can't relate to him in any film, and I don't know, his charisma does not work for me. So, whereas Wahlberg, I think, is a solid actor. So I really like the 4th one. I think it's a fun movie. It's a great end to the series. As far as the releases, first one, again, this is back when we got a lot of stuff from Bay on his releases, lots of bonus features. You got commentary, a bucket of extra things. Of course, the video is absolutely perfect. Nice case here. There was some cool special versions of this in the Transformer things. I don't get those just because they're hard for me to store. So, as far as this is right here, I would give it a 9 out of 10 for the release itself. The robot ones, 10 out of 10s, because those are awesome. And I, pretty much straight across the board, because I think those are fantastic special editions. The movie itself, I would give a 7.5 out of 10 for the first Transformers. I do like it. Definitely not Bay's strongest, but it's fun. Second one, again, tons of special features. This is another loaded one. Again, you could get it with Transformers, so 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 for the robot version. And the movie itself, though, 6 out of 10. Again, Michael Bay's worst movie, the worst of the series. It's still fun to watch, but that's all I can give that one. The third one. Bay did not do commentary on the third one, and this started really kind of lacking in features. That's why I didn't get any of the special versions, because there wasn't much on them. So the third one, as far as release, down to a 7 out of 10. The movie, though, I like it as much as the first one. I thought it was fun, and I loved watching Optimus be awesome. So this, again, we'll give that a 7.5 out of 10. And the new movie, the fourth one, I will give a solid 8 out of 10. To me, it was the best in the series. Is it a perfect movie? No. I mean, again, it's a super huge budget explosion feature. It's more fun than a lot of the ones I've seen like that. And giant robot smashing stuff. Peter Cullen being Optimus. That alone sells it for me. So, there you have it. That's my opinion on the Transformers movies. And let me know anything else you want to see. Comments. Share the video, like it, let me know any of your thoughts, and we'll see you here next time at Movie Mayhem.